Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. I'm Paul Kretschmer. This is the second of two broadcasts with Tom Bowman talking about common sense energy, looking at the world's climate and adapting energy production to meet it in the future.
The result that it makes you and me and everybody else feel trivial and small going up against these enormous entangled systems. But that's just an interpretation, and that's really what I've been writing about lately. We have a mental model of climate change that says we're too small to fix this, when in reality we're not. If we turn that model on its head, we discover that this is something we can all help to overcome.
Does that kind of solution or package of solutions require an Alexander the Great to take his sword and slash through the Gordian knot and say, there, now that's taken care of? Or are we looking for something that's a little less dramatic, perhaps, but more doable in the actual reality?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because the slicing through of the Gordian knot, the nice thing about slicing through a knot is you don't have to untie it, right? It just goes away. And what that happens in our own minds when we reinterpret the problem. So if we were to set that idea of this entangled Gordian knot aside, what does climate change really boil down to? Well, it just boils down to one thing. We're burning too much fossil fuel. We have to stop doing that. We need to stop doing it quickly, and we don't want to fail. So in my book, I wrote a slogan: stop burning fossil fuels well before mid-century, and absolutely, positively do not stop. And when you describe it as an imperative that's very direct like that, it means that every business, every local government, every organization, every household can think, how do I do the things I do that I need to do, but not burn fossil fuels while I do it? And it suddenly puts this within reach. It allows us to share our progress together. We can build a community of mutual support around action. And this is how societies can change very quickly.
I heard in the last day or two from the BBC World Service that the company that manufactures Land and Range Rovers is planning within the next 5 to 10 years to convert all their vehicles from fossil fuel-powered engines to electric.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so has GM. I think that their time frame is 2035, but they surprised everybody a couple weeks ago when they announced that their entire vehicle fleet will be electric within the next 15 years. This is huge news.
In that sense, does that shift burning of fossil fuels from one location to another, or do we genuinely come up with an available power source or power sources that exist on Earth that does not require fossil or carbon production to be done in the first place? Because sometimes it feels like we're just shifting the problem from one location to another.
Well, and at times we are. That's the hard truth of it, but we're still in the development phase, early phases of this. Renewable energy, both wind and solar, have been the fastest growing sectors in the energy business for a long time. The World Bank and the European Development Bank have both announced that they will no longer fund fossil fuel development projects anywhere in the world. So the race is on to build out our infrastructure around renewables. And right now, wind and solar are cheaper than developing anything in the fossil fuels because the prices continue to fall so dramatically. And there is interest in things like tide energy, which today is expensive and just developmental, but in time will become more and more affordable. So we're in that rapid transition, and the stronger the signals we send through government policy into the marketplace, the faster and more robust this transition can become.
We discussed earlier in our conversation what's been going on in Texas lately, and the fact that the climate is not, at the moment at least, what they're used to planning for, building infrastructure for, and so on. And part of that, I guess, is the fact that the turbines they use down there have been freezing up and not able to turn in the cold weather. The first thought that I had when I saw that on the news in the last few hours was, a Danish firm and another firm from here in New England are going to build turbines near Nantucket and in Long Island Sound. Mm-hmm. Now, as I mentioned earlier, being in the Northeast, the first thought I had when I heard what was going on in Texas was, well, if they're going to build that sort of thing up here in the Northeast, they better include defrosting systems or something in order for them to function even when the weather isn't what they were perhaps originally designed for.
Exactly. But, they have wind farms in the North Sea where it's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
So and they build them with antifreeze and with heaters in the blades and so forth so that they can work when the weather gets inclement. But when you live in a place as hot as Texas, it's easy to imagine thinking you would never need that, right? Because you're not used to seeing temperatures this low, and they probably say, I'm surmising, but they probably saved money by not having to invest in that additional winterization equipment.
That was my thought, that option was available, but they looked at it in what they thought were realistic eyes and said, it'd be nice to have this. But when it comes to holding the bottom line on the construction and all that, we're going to take a chance here, maybe it doesn't even feel like a chance, in leaving that option out, at least initially.
Yeah, it's true, and apparently the energy market in Texas is very competitive. Consumers can choose who they want to buy their electricity from. Where I live in Southern California, we can't. Southern California Edison is my utility. That means I buy it from them, and I can put solar on my roof and offset the costs and so forth. But in Texas, you can buy it from lots of different companies, and that means that they're all looking to offer you the best rate, and that means they don't want to invest more than they really have to in their own equipment.
Here in Connecticut, it's a lot like Texas in the sense that well over 15 years ago, the electric utility market in Connecticut was deregulated by the General Assembly and with the authority given to regulate the new picture given to a regulatory authority. So you can choose who you get your power from, for instance, and the utility that you'd already always done business with, and who up until that time owned the generating plants. So it was a complete system from end to end. Nowadays, we have a power plant near Middletown, Connecticut, where I'm at, which has been a user of fossil fuel for a long time and was for a long time referred to by people as one of the filthy five, one of the dirtiest power plants in New England.
Uh-huh.
Now, in the following things going as they are at the current time, in light of the changed realities, that plant is going from a dirty plant to a plant that has very clean, up-to-date, as far as I can determine, technology, and it's only going to be used as a peaking plant, which means it will only kick into the grid when it has to, rather than having to be running all the time, because there are going to be other facilities already online which are as clean or almost as clean as this new one is going to be, and they're the ones that are running all the time. And so in some ways here in Connecticut, we're already seeing on a level that maybe many consumers are not aware of. The changes that are coming along, the utilities are taking the lead on that, and maybe they're not even doing as good a job as they could to inform their customers that that's happening.
There's a lot going on below the surface that people don't realize. Iowa gets something like nearly 40% of its electricity from wind. Most consumers don't know that. About 2 years ago, in the month of February, California utilities across the state delivered 100% renewable electricity to the entire state. It wasn't always 100% month after month, but it was for that month of February, which means that there's this big change, this huge shift happening in the energy industry. And you see that also in the collapse of oil prices and the bankruptcies of coal mines, coal companies here in the United States. It doesn't get that much news, but it is actually taking place pretty dramatically.
Thank you very much, sir. It's been a fascinating conversation. I really enjoyed hearing what you have to say.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
That concludes this two-part series with Tom Bowman. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of this station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM, WIHS.